You're tuned in to Getting to the Root of It, focusing on healing and letting go of the wounds of addiction and other unresolved traumas of the past. Your breakthrough begins with you. Are you ready to change your life? Stay tuned as your host, expert therapist, personal development coach, and spiritual cheerleader, Natashah Khan, inspires you to live the life you were destined to live.
Hi everyone, this is Natashah Khan, and welcome back to Getting to the Root of It. If you guys had joined me last week, we had talked about the disease concept of addiction. I had taken you guys through the biopsychosocial model of addiction, where we explored different varying factors that contribute to the illness and where it stems from. Right, we look at the root of the issue. One of the things that I wanted to focus on today was talking a little bit about the distorted perceptions that are part of the mental illness, and understanding that the distorted perception or the skewed mindset is a result of life experiences and what we believe to be true. So I wanted to share with you, as always, getting to the root of it, I want to take you back to the beginning. And through a CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy model, coupled with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow is a theorist who suggests that these hierarchy of needs are these primal needs are things in which human beings need to have met in order for them to thrive, in order for us to have healthy brain development. And so I kind of want to take you through the model and share with you and give you some examples of some of the basic primal needs that we as human beings need to have in order for our brain to mature, in order for our brains to thrive, in order for us to learn on how to be emotionally healthy and how to be able to connect to others in relationships in a healthy way. Okay? So the hierarchy of needs consists of your food, shelter, nurturing, love, and affection, safety, protection, and guidance. Now, when we think of safety and protection, I'm not just talking about the physical aspect of it, I'm also talking about the emotional aspect of it. Someone needing to be emotionally protected, someone needing to be emotionally safe. And so these are very important needs that need to be met. It's vital to someone's development. And from the time that you come into this world, the very first person that we are able to bond with and have a healthy bond with is our mother. In the womb, she provides the food, she provides the shelter, she provides the nurturing, the love and affection, she keeps us safe, she protects us, and she guides us, right? For those 9 months that we are with her. Now, when we come out of the womb, it's a little bit more tricky and things get a little bit more difficult because now that we come into the world, we are exposed to so many other things around us, right? So many other life experiences and events and people and places and things. We are influenced by everything that we're around, the things we see, the things we hear, even when someone is holding us that is not our mother, right? All those different things, someone's touch plays a very important role in how a child is developed. So please keep all of that in the back of your mind as I go through this model and help you understand the dis-ease of our mind, the mental insanity that is created, that is developed over time, that plays an intricate part in how we see ourselves and how we see the world, right? It shapes our mindset. So think about whether you're months old or a year old, but you're finally come into this world and everyone is excited that there's this miracle of life and there's this new life that's in existence, right? We come into this world innocent, but then life happens. And depending upon who you are and where you're from, culturally, You may have cultural influences, you may have religious influences in your life. Most oftentimes, you may experience death, you may experience bullying, you may be the product of, or not product of, but you may be, caught in the middle of a divorce between parents, and or growing up with only one parent, maybe not growing up with your parents at all, and living with your grandparents, aunts and uncles, etc. You may have experienced where you've had one parent working a lot, or both parents working a lot, and you being at home alone, where there's a lack of structure, or you having to be responsible for your siblings, because maybe you're the older of all the children in the home. Maybe you're part of moving around a lot. Maybe you're a military brat, and or mom or family may have struggled financially, and every so often you had to move. So therefore there was a lack of stability in your environment. You may have also been raised by an addicted parent, or watching your parents care for an elder or a sick family member, right? There's so many different things that we could be exposed to. And just some of the things that I've listed for you today actually are considered to be traumatic experiences. But a lot of times for many of us, we go through these experiences, and when we don't talk about it, when we don't quite understand what's going on in those experiences, we tend to normalize or justify or rationalize or make excuses for the behaviors of the adults in those experiences and or circumstances. So before I go any further, I think it's important for me to break down trauma so that we understand a little bit about what trauma is. And trauma is any single event or any continuing event or ongoing event or experience that leaves someone emotionally disrupted or with emotional discord, emotionally overwhelmed, struggling to, have held on to emotions that they've had a very difficult time processing and or letting go of. And trauma is unique to the individual's experience in that we should not compare our trauma to someone else's trauma, or we should not hear about someone's trauma and then have an opinion or want to judge it because we don't deem it to be traumatic. We have to respect that when we all experience something, it's our experience, right? It's our perspective, it's how we feel, and we have to respect that person's reality in that moment for what they have experienced because we weren't there. Even if we may have been in and around the circumstances, we were not actually experiencing whatever that trauma may have been. So keep that in mind as we go through this, to have a better understanding of it's not our place to judge, to compare, and or to dismiss what other people have experienced in life. And I think that as human beings and as a society, we tend to struggle with that sometimes. We're quick to have an opinion or tell people that they shouldn't feel a certain way, or tell them that what they experienced didn't happen, or didn't quite happen the way that they remembered it. If those are not healthy approaches, if you want someone to feel safe, if you want someone to feel comfortable and that they can be vulnerable with you, or that you want them to talk about these situations with you, it is very important that we create a very safe and loving space and environment so that an individual can be comfortable in being able to share with us the things that they've been through. So let's get back to these life experiences and how it impacts our mind, how it impacts our perception. So you have to consider or factor in the age at which a person experiences a traumatic experience, because that will determine how they process and understand and or interpret what has happened to them. So according to NIDA, which is the National Institute of Drug Addiction, science has shown that the human brain tends to maturate on average every 4 years from the time that the child is developed in the womb. And that brain matures every 4 years, right up until the average mean age of 22. Don't quote me, I am not a scientist. This is information that I've received by exploring this website. Again, it's www.nida.org. That's www.nida.org. Okay, so a lot of the information I'm sharing with you today, you will also be able to check out on their website. And so every 4 years, as the brain develops, there's different parts of our brain that is maturing. There is the area where our brain processes information, interprets information, comprehends information. The prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain, is where we have our emotional regulator. It's that part of the brain that, with having been nurtured and experiencing love and affection and feeling safe and protected, that emotional regulator will develop and mature over time. So as we get older and we begin to experience emotion, through nurturing and learning healthy coping strategies, we can then learn on how to manage emotion. Now, it sounds pretty simple, right? You come into this world and you're guided and you're nurtured and you learn healthy coping skills so that when you start to have feelings, you can learn how to manage those feelings. At least that's the plan or the intent anyway, right? Well, I often say to my families and to my clients that you don't know what you don't know. And it's important to remember that whatever you hear on this episode of this podcast or any episodes before and after, my goal is not to place blame or to judge anyone. Now, when you hear this information, the very first thing or the very first thought is, man, my mom or dad came up short, or my mom and dad made a mistake. I'm not providing you this information to go out into the world to blame anyone. We all have to understand that our attitudes and behaviors are learned. So if we learn unhealthy attitudes and behaviors from mom or dad and or caregivers, then that would only mean that mom and dad and or caregivers learn their unhealthy attitudes and behaviors from their caregivers. And then their caregivers learned it from the caregivers behind them. And it just goes on back, for generations. What I want us to focus on is understanding that we have evolved so much and we have an opportunity and we have so much more resources today to be able to create change. So while our parents or grandparents and ancestors may not have had the resources and the tools to be able to make the necessary changes so that we don't keep perpetuating, an unhealthy cycle, or that we don't keep carrying over or paying forward generational curses, we have the opportunity to do something about it and create that change today. Okay, so again, coming back to these traumatic experiences. So as a child, depending upon how old I am when I have experienced any one of these life-changing experiences, again, death, bullying, divorce, moving around a lot, parent working a lot, child abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. I mean, the list just goes on, right? Well, that child has that experience, and without processing, without really understanding what they've been through, that child is going to draw their own conclusion. They're going to develop their own opinion and or perspective of that experience. When children have suffered emotionally, they've experienced something that has been frightening or has been scary or makes them sad, children can't help but ask themselves, what did I do wrong? Was that my fault? They're left sort of a question mark. Most oftentimes, in my years of working in the field of mental health and addiction, I have heard a lot of young men and women, and including myself, after having experienced something traumatic, walk away with the belief that what they experienced was their fault, or they had failed someone in their lives, or that they were not worthy of love, or that they were not good enough. So these are called I am statements. The child walks away with their own personal belief of that experience, and they believe I am not worthy, I am not good enough, I am a failure, everything's my fault, etc. As a result of these beliefs that the child carries, it promotes feelings, and a lot of times unwanted feelings, right? So there's guilt, there's shame, embarrassment, fearful, scared, hopeless, helpless, powerless, sad. There's a series of emotions that this child will experience as a result of the experience and now what they believe to be true. And if they are not able to communicate how they feel, if they're not able to express their feelings and or have learned healthy coping skills on how to deal with these emotions that I just mentioned, then what is the child left with? Most oftentimes, we sort of innately and automatically have this place within us where I call it the infinite box, where we store all of our emotions. So the minute we feel, we suppress those emotions or we store those emotions. Think of it almost like a closet and or a box. And so every time something happens and you feel and you don't know what to do with it, you put those emotions away. Well, what that leads to, those unwanted feelings, is it's going to drive how we behave, right? You know, children who are scared and afraid all the time, their behaviors tend to be shy and timid or guarded, you know, maybe not wanting to socialize, not wanting to be around other people, maybe want to be in the house a lot, or they may be super attached to mom or dad as a result. Children who are emotionally needy and sad and deprived of love and affection. They tend to be overly giving. They tend to want to be center of attention. They tend to strive to be perfectionist and or wanting to, you know, if they think it's their fault, right? If they think something happened in life and it's their fault, then they want to be the fixer. They want to be the rescuer. They want to be the problem solver. These are all maladaptive, unhealthy behaviors that develop as a result of how we feel and what we believe to be true. And ladies and gentlemen, we haven't even started talking about drugs and alcohol yet. These are things that are where children are experiencing and attitudes and behaviors that are forming way before drugs and alcohol and sex and all these other things of the world factor in or come into play, that they start to indulge in as a means to get some kind of relief, right? Whether it's a mental relief, an emotional relief, and or a physical relief. So these cognitive distortions, this thwarted perception, is developed because we are going through life and not being able to process and really understand these life experiences and or traumatic events. And we harbor these emotions that then drive these behaviors, and we continue on and we perpetuate that cycle, and we create this mental dysfunction as a result. And you can't fault the individual because they don't know any better. And I can't fault the parents or the caregivers because it comes back to my original saying, you don't know what you don't know, right? But I will say this, there comes a point when we've got to stop justifying, we've got to stop rationalizing, we got to stop making excuses, and we got to start doing something. We have to be willing to want to do something different than we're used to doing. Gandhi has a saying that says, be the change you want to see in the world. So we don't want to wait for other people to change. We don't want to wait for our parents or our caregivers or people of our past to apologize and say they're sorry and to say that what they did was wrong. Because guess what? We might never get that apology. And so what does that mean? If someone doesn't apologize is for causing me harm or for hurting me, then what? Am I supposed to hold on to that emotional pain or that psychological pain for the rest of my life? Well, guess what? Here's the reality. I held on to that pain. I held on to feelings of resentment and the guilt and the shame because of my years of being abused physically, emotionally, sexually, psychologically. And all it did was when I got introduced to having a drink, when I got introduced to smoking marijuana at the age of 17 to 18 years old, I didn't know I was going to be an addict. I didn't even know what an addict was. I didn't know I was going to have a problem with any of this stuff. I was a young girl hanging with her friends, partying. What harm would come from smoking a joint? What harm would come from drinking a few beers, right? I thought nothing of it. And in the early years of my using, from let's say from about 17 to maybe about 21, I was experimenting with substances. I didn't use it every day. I didn't use it a lot, if you want to consider that an excuse or not, but it was something in my mind that was manageable. And then after the age of 21, where I was legal and I was an adult now and I could buy my own stuff, I started using more on a social level, right? At parties, or I would throw the party. I got married young, so my husband and I would have a lot of parties and we would use then. Again, I was still responsible. I became a mother at the age of 21 for the first time. My second daughter came when I was 24, and still using socially and not causing harm to anyone. I would work all day, pay bills, be responsible, do all the things that I needed to do as an adult. And then on the weekends, I would have a party and, have some friends over or have a barbecue, and innocently, not a big deal, right? Well, you fast forward to about my late 20s, and after being married for 13 years, and you guys have heard this story already, in my testimony, life started getting really difficult. And as life started to get really difficult, and I didn't really have a lot of healthy coping strategies, and I had had all these years of harbored emotion and beliefs that I was not worthy of love and that I wasn't good enough and that I needed to be perfect. And if I wasn't perfect, that means I was a failure. I mean, the mindset, the mental insanity that was brewing inside of me was crazy. But I ignored it. I didn't pay attention to it for so many years. Till it came that time when my first husband, decided that he needed to move on in his life and that he didn't want to be married anymore. And all of that pain from my past and all of the negative beliefs that I had stored and all of the emotions that I had buried started surfacing. And crazy enough that when it started surfacing, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was as if I was in the ocean and I was just getting hit in the face, wave upon wave of emotion. And I didn't have healthy coping mechanisms. I didn't have healthy coping skills, or even had enough for that matter. I didn't know what to do. I remembered as a little girl that you didn't air your dirty laundry out to anyone. So who was I going to talk to? Who would I tell any of this stuff to? And I felt lost and I felt confused. And it just added to the mental anguish that I was dealing with. And as a result of that, I continued to use more because now I believe that the more that I use, it will give me the relief that I needed. And it did. It gave me an immediate relief, but it didn't give me permanent or long-term relief. All it did was give me long-term agony and permanent consequences, right? And it just caused me to suffer more than I had suffered before. So I perpetuated the cycle. And that's where my addiction just continued to progress and worsen over time. It wasn't just about the drugs and alcohol, it was before that. It was the mental anguish that I was suffering and I was hiding and I was masking and I pretended that everything was okay. But when in reality, mentally and emotionally, things weren't okay. And I hid it from everyone, from friends, from family. I didn't want anybody to know about it because I didn't think anybody cared. I didn't think that anybody would want to know. And it all came back to my mindset. I didn't believe that I was worthy enough. I didn't believe that I was good enough. So I hope that all that I've shared with you today kind of increased your awareness and opened your mind to help you understand how that negative mindset really grows and festers into something that's really rooted in us that can be very dark and can be very destructive in our mind and then in our lives. So we have the power to change our mindset. Although once upon a time we may have been the victims of a circumstance and or an experience, we don't have to remain in that place. We don't have to stay in that place. We don't have to stay in that mindset. A lot of those negative beliefs that we carry are myths. They are not true. They are lies that we have told ourselves, or they are lies that we've heard from people who've attempted to hurt us. But we get to take a stand today and say that we will not be hurt anymore. We will not allow other people, places, and things to have the power or the control or the influence that it may have had on us when we were little. We are adults now. We are way beyond our experiences. And I want to empower you and encourage you and challenge you to ask yourself, what are my beliefs? And are the beliefs that I hold today, are they mine? Or do they belong to the people in my life who told me to believe things because they believed it that way? Or I believe things because of what someone else said I had to. Or I believe something because I just didn't know any better because I didn't understand. I think it's really important for us as human beings to take a step back from this crazy world that is sucking us into this vortex or into this vacuum and ask yourself, what do I believe to be true? I have to set the path for my life. And the only way to set that path is based on what I believe to be true. My mindset is everything. And I will tell you that today, having 12 years sober is because of a changed mindset. And I didn't do it alone. Spirituality and a relationship with a higher power is very important to my sanity. The God of my understanding has restored me to sanity. The God of my understanding has helped me see that I am good enough, that I am worthy, that I am lovable, that I am not a failure. Have I made mistakes? Yes. Have I made some poor choices in my life? Yes. I am not perfect. And it's okay. And I will never be perfect. And I have learned through the program of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, to be perfectly imperfect. I have learned that it's progress, not perfection. I have learned to give myself permission to be me, flaws and all. And I cannot tell you how much relief, how at ease, and how content I am to know that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. But I remind myself every day that in order to live the life that God has called me to live, I have to change my mindset. I am a big believer that what you believe to be true will manifest in the way in which you walk. So again, I challenge you and I encourage you to pay attention to what do you believe to be true. And if you don't like the way in which you live your life, if you don't like the path that you're on or that you're taking, then take a step back and reset your mind. Focus on what the truth is, not what other people has told you, but what the truth is. And the only way for me to find the truth is seeking the word of God, seeking the word of the higher power. Because my higher power is my truth. He is my light. He directs my path. And as a result of growing in relationship with a higher power in the last 12 years, I have been able to change that negative mindset. And I'm able to be focused on his word, his truth, and what he has in store for my life. And today I am filled with hope. I am filled with joy. I am filled with peace. And I am filled with freedom to live the life that God has called me to live. Man, guys, I wish I had more time with you guys. I just want you to know that there's so much more to come. There's so much more information to share. And I hope that you guys can tune in with me next week. I have a very special guest. She's a colleague of mine and a very good friend of mine. And she has her doctorate in conflict resolution. And I'm inviting her on next week because I want her to share with you. I want to expand on this conversation. She's going to talk to you a lot about interpersonal conflicts. She's going to talk to you a lot about how life experiences tend to influence us to such a degree that it removes us so far away from our identity and our authentic selves. And I don't want to give too much of it away, but it plays a huge part in understanding why we find ourselves seeking people, places, and things as a way to be whole, but never really finding it because it's not who we really are. So please stay tuned next week when I have my special guest. And also, if you want to continue to have this conversation, you want to know more about cognitive distortions, or you want to know more about how do we untangle, how do we undo this mental anguish and insanity that we experience, you can reach me anytime via email at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. Again, that's empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to schedule a clarity call with me, or you'd like to start doing some one-on-one work with me, please check me out on my recent website at collaborativehealingpartners.com. Again, that's www.collaborativehealingpartners.com. I look forward to speaking with you, maybe even working with you. If not, stay tuned, guys, and I will see you guys next week. Have a blessed day.